Hello, and welcome to the Badger Politic. I'm Scott Stearns.
Good evening, Paul Sickle.
Hey, Paul. What's new?
Well, I was,
Brewers?
Yeah, that's good.
Brett Kavenaugh, the Supreme Court nominee for Donald Trump. Yeah, it looked like a shoo-in a week ago, and then out of the blue came this accusation that he sexually assaulted an acquaintance back in high school. Christine Blasey Ford, who's a college professor of psychology in California, is accusing him of sexual assault. So that has thrown the whole thing into a tizzy the last couple days, to say the least. And so now they've had to delay the vote. It was scheduled for later this week, and that's now delayed. And it looks like Monday they're going to give Kavenaugh an opportunity to speak to these accusations, and they've also given the opportunity for Ford to also speak to the committee. The word was she was going to do it now. That may or may not happen. I think the word is that she wants the FBI to investigate as a condition of her testifying, but it doesn't look like Charles Grassley, who's the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, is going to cooperate with that. So it's pretty much she testifies Monday, or they just move forward and say, we're going to vote, and everybody lays their cards on the table.
Yeah, I talked about this earlier. A little skeptical that they will move forward with this one.
Well, it's going to be a tough vote for some of them. I mean, I think it could make it out of the Judiciary Committee if she doesn't testify. Now, if she testifies, I think the optics are going to be really bad, especially considering this past year and the Me Too movement and everything. I think it paints a really poor picture.
I mean, it didn't go over well when Anita Hill testified.
No.
And that was 26 years ago.
Right.
Or 27 years ago.
I mean, he came in, obviously.
I mean, Thomas still got on the bench, but it really hurt the Republicans, especially in the Senate the following year, 1992.
Yeah.
26 years ago. They call that You're the Woman, actually.
Yeah.
So you would think this could really hurt them politically in this election for Senate, and probably next year, where the map really still isn't that great for Democrats next year either. Or next cycle in the 2020.
The bottom line is they have to, and Mitch McConnell, as the majority leader, is going to have to make an assessment about how much he wants to take on this risk. Because either way, at this point, they kind of lose either way to some degree. Mm-hmm. They either vote for this guy and they get the guy they wanted, but he comes in with damaged goods, and there's going to be potentially senators that lose re-election because of the vote they're going to have to take. Or they pull back the nominee,
right,
and they're not, and chances are they won't be able to have another vote on a Supreme Court nominee before this election. And then do you risk, from their perspective, you risk demoralizing your base, getting pissed, and then not turning out to vote for you.
Meanwhile, we were going to use this as a wedge issue against vulnerable Democrats.
Yeah.
In this year's election.
That's not going to happen.
That won't work
right now. I mean, if you're Joe Manchin or you're Heidi Heitkamp, now you don't think it's a risky vote to vote against this guy.
Right.
Because you have every reason to go to your constituents and be like, well,
right.
I'm very fearful of the process as it's played out. And
I think with Jeff Flake, who's in a real pissy mood with the Republicans.
Well, and he's on his way out.
And on his way out.
He's got nothing to lose.
So I think you got, between Flake, Murkowski, and Collins, you probably have 3 likely no votes on the Republican side.
Yeah.
If you keep all your 49 Democrats together, that's 52. That's more than enough that there isn't a single Republican that you can single out.
You're going to have John Kyle now, who's replacing John McCain in Arizona. So it's a 51-49 Senate. So pretty much,
is it Heller, the guy in Nevada, then too?
Yeah,
he would be he's up for re-election.
Yes,
so that
is not.
So that's probably a no vote too.
That is now a vulnerable seat.
It's a vulnerable seat to begin with.
Yes, but it is a vulnerable seat, and
so Heller's probably going to. I mean, look, I think the writing's on the wall that you're going to have 4 or 5, maybe as many as say 7 Republicans ready to go vote no. So I think they're going to pull the nomination.
So yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say is, what do you think the odds are?
They may get it out of committee just because.
Let's assume for a moment that she doesn't testify. Mm-hmm. Then I think it probably makes it out of committee because they can justify it. They can say, like, well, we gave her the opportunity to testify. She didn't show. we're moving forward, and we'll let the full Senate consider the nomination.
But it doesn't work as a litmus test anymore for red state Democrats to prove their moderation, because now they've got a really good reason that has nothing to do with ideology to vote no.
Exactly.
And if anything, it becomes more swing state Republicans that have to be watching their back, including swing state Republicans who are running in 2020 as well as 2018, that need to be thinking about, is this worth it to vote for when they probably have dozens, if not hundreds, of other right-wing jurists ready to go.
I mean, the trick is that it's unlikely that you would have a nominee that would make it out of committee that then wouldn't go to a full vote in the Senate. But if McConnell is of the mind that, like, look, he's damaged goods, this is no good for us, he's going to go to Grassley and be like, Chuck, we can't move forward on this.
Yeah, but I could see within committee the need to prove their bona fides and make a point and try to hold the vote.
Yeah, it makes it tougher on McConnell that he doesn't have he can't defer to the committee then. He can't be like, well, the committee made the determination that we weren't going to move forward and the president's pulling the nomination back. We're going to review the situation and we'll come back with the nominee.
I think that if it goes through the committee, then the pressure, the
pressure's on McConnell then.
The president, first of all, is open to delaying it. And this would be the other option.
Well, that's what he says today.
Right. Would they delay it in a way and then start saying that the Democrats are filibustering, basically, and then try to use that as an election issue rather than going to a vote?
It doesn't work anymore because they got rid of the filibusters, so they can say it's a de facto filibuster all they want, but it's not the case. They have all the power.
I'm just saying that they may try to go that route.
Yeah, that's not going to fly.
Ultimately, the route they go is going to have something to do with the easiest way to preserve the Senate majority for the Republicans in 2018.
Well, the easiest way is...
And then also what the 2020 senators are thinking on the Republican side. That's where it's going to go. Also, and I'm taking it as a given now that Heidi Heitkamp, Joe Manchin, Doug Jones,
Caskell.
I'm taking it as a given that they're just going to now vote no.
Right. I don't see how any of them vote for the guy if people like Collins from Maine, Murkowski, Alaska, if those people, if you have a single Republican that votes against, I don't see how these Democrats vote for. So what are the odds? What do we think statistically? What are the odds that Kavanaugh's nomination gets pulled back and he's not the nominee? Do we think it's better than 50% at this point?
Yeah, I think he gets pulled. I think he
gets pulled too because I just don't.
I don't know what the odds are.
He may make it. He may squeak it out. Especially if she doesn't testify. I think they can justify voting on it and getting him out of committee.
They'll bide their time.
But it's going to be tough between now and...
I can see them trying to run out the clock and try to use it as a wedge issue still in the elections.
Right.
That's the best play if I'm them.
You just delay the vote entirely?
I don't think I have Susan Collins. I don't think I have...
I need more Republicans.
I don't think I have enough Republicans.
Yeah.
But these red state Democrats ought to get on board because they're red state Democrats.
I don't know.
And then you use it to rail against the 5 red state Democrats that are all up for election this year. Like I'm not saying Baldwin red state Democrats. I'm saying hardcore red states that have voted red for the last 4 cycles.
But the reason, Paul, why I don't think that is a likely scenario is because
you don't believe in politics?
No. It's because
you don't believe in gravity.
If these allegations are true, then chances are this is not an isolated incident, and there may be others. If this is going to be delayed for a month or 2 or more. Sure. There is more and more likelihood as time goes on that there are others that are going to come out.
Okay, that's a good point.
Other women are going to come out and say, like, I had this experience, or this is what my impression was of this guy. There's going to be a pile-on effect.
That's quite possible.
So I think that's what they're scared shitless about. And that's why they want to get this thing done quickly, is to avoid all of that.
Right.
If they're not, if they want to stay with this guy.
But I think it's tantamount to political suicide for them to push him through.
Perhaps.
For the Republicans.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're up against a rock and a hard place
so many people, and it'll make so many people get out and vote. blue. It'll impact swing seats in blue states and red states in the House and in the state houses and the governorships. It will impact that.
Yes.
If they do this.
There will be a trickle down effect.
It won't be just the Senate.
No.
They will literally, they're already down 8 to 11 points, I think, now in the generic polls, putting them in a pretty bad spot to keep the House, if not very unlikely, becoming increasingly unlikely spot to hold the House. This would more than seal the deal.
They are,
if they push this through. I mean, I think they'd be insane to push it.
Well,
through.
It's just.
Then again, who knows? I mean,
but like I was saying,
why not?
They're in a rock and a hard place situation because they either move forward and push him through quick before anything else can go bad, or they pull them back and then they risk, like I said, demoralizing their base to the point where a lot of these Trump voters are going to be flipping the middle finger at some of these red state Republicans that are up for re-election in the Senate, and they're not going to come out and vote. And then some of them are at risk.
I don't think
Dean Heller's a prime example.
Pulling it back is not going to hurt Dean Heller. Dean Heller's way more vulnerable to a blue wave than he is to
Joe Donnelly in Indiana. I mean, maybe they don't get the Republicans to take him out. North Dakota. I mean,
that could be. I think the more likely it becomes an anti-Trump election, and there's enough of that sentiment, just like there was, say, Doug Jones. You know, what I mean,
right?
Because this is not Alabama. I mean, Indiana is not. We have to remember too when we talk about red states. There's Alabama and there's Indiana. Those are very different places. Indiana is somewhere between where Wisconsin is and Alabama.
What I'm getting at is just the motivation.
I'm
getting at the motivation of Republican voters, and if they pull back Kavanaugh's nomination, I think the motivational level, you might lose a few points right there with Republican
motivation. You could lose a couple points in a close election.
That could be the difference to the Republicans keeping the Senate at this point, because what we've learned in the last month or so is that the Republicans are pulling money out of West Virginia. No. They're having to send money to Texas to defend Ted Cruz.
I would argue, and I go back to this all the time, if the Democrats work on expanding the map and by expanding the map, I don't mean trying to win Alaska in the presidential election or something like that. What I mean is, in your red states where you're competitive, try to build up in your core strength. So if you're in Indiana, is a good example because one, I know it because it's a really close state.
Yeah.
If you're Joe Donnelly, first of all, it's about a 10 to 20% plus, Republican state. Usually goes 55 to 60% Republican in a generic election.
Right.
It's not like Alabama where it's almost 70%.
Yeah, it's not.
Or something like that.
It's not crazy.
It's also not Wisconsin, which has been teetering red, but still within the low single digits, even when it's going red. So I would argue that in Indiana, you would want to really expand the electorate as much as you can in Indianapolis and in Northwest Indiana near Gary and Hammond, also South Bend, wherever you have people part of, as we would call, the rising American electorate, non-white voters, people that aren't being picked up in polls, much like the Marquette poll, still doesn't seem to pick up non-white voters real well, even though they do show a lead for Tony Evers.
That is the news of the day, is that the new Marquette poll came out, and we've talked about it previously. The last one, back in August, was a tie. Tony Evers as the Democratic nominee at 46%, Walker at 46%, and
Walker was
Phil Anderson, the Libertarian, at 6%.
Walker was ahead, caveat, among registered voters by 2 points.
But as we move closer to Election Day, the poll to focus on is the likely voter poll.
And what you'll see, which we saw last cycle, is, and I believe we even saw in the presidential, Marquette seemed to pick up on this actually really well. I'll give them credit, is you actually have more educated white people, which now is skewing more Democratic, answering the likely voter screens. And so at this point, when we're still at least a month out, you tend to have a skewed likely voter sample that skews toward whites that are more likely to now vote Democratic than you used to, say, 20 years ago. And actually, I would argue your registered voter screen is probably more accurate. It's going to include a lot more lower educated whites.
So to the level set, what the Marquette poll said today is that Tony Evers has 49%, Scott Walker has 44%, Phil Anderson, the Libertarian, has 6%.
That part I don't buy.
That's the likely voter poll. Mm-hmm. The registered voter poll is not all that different. 47% for Evers, 43% for Walker, 7% for Anderson.
Okay, so that makes me feel good about the poll. The registered voter is almost the same as the likely voter screen.
It's within a point.
Right, and actually the gap goes because Phil Anderson gets more voters.
Right. And who's
not going to get any of this.
Right. He'll get a few.
I feel comfortable saying Phil Anderson is not going to be getting 6 or 7%.
No, I would not.
If he gets half of that, I would be mildly surprised.
Yes.
I mean, because that would be better than the Gary Johnson William Weld did in Wisconsin.
Right.
Ticket. And I mean, and that was a real escape hatch for a lot of torn Republicans, like especially in the WOW counties, the more urban, educated Republicans who couldn't stomach a Trump vote.
Right.
A whole bunch of them voted for Gary Johnson. And even with all that, he still only managed 3% statewide, just over 100,000 votes. So I would argue that these, when we look at this, there's no way Phil Anderson is going to be commanding twice as much as Gary Johnson. Gary Johnson was an actual third option for a lot of.
Let's assume Anderson gets 2%. Mm-hmm. I think 4 of those percentage points go to Evers and 2 go to Walker. Because. Yeah. Or maybe you split them because libertarians are basically like disenchanted.
I honestly think somebody that says they're voting for Gary Anderson is just not paying attention. Phil Anderson. Is not going to. Or Phil Anderson. Gary Anderson used to kick for the Steelers, I believe. I believe he kicked.
Is he running?
Dude, I think that guy kicked for the Steelers from the time I was 6 until I was about 39. I think he retired in his mid-70s.
Oh, maybe he should run for office.
He might be too old, though. I mean, yeah, but I can't remember. Did he kick for the Steelers or was he for the Saints? There was Martin Anderson, too. Yeah. Gary Anderson,
There's a lot of Andersons out there.
Right. Not to be confused with Neil Anderson, the really good running back out of Chicago who replaced Walter Payton in Chicago.
Right. So one other detail I want to offer on this likely voter poll is that when you get into...
Phil Anderson is not getting... I don't think he's getting any of that percent. In fact, I think all of those people are just not going to vote. And what you should do is do the 49-44 and in
isolation.
And in isolation and just normalize that to a two-party race. And I think then it would be 53-46 to Evers probably, or 53-47
perhaps. So... in terms of voting groups, this is kind of interesting. So this, in terms of the governor's race,
okay,
white,
you're drilling down, deep dive,
white male, deep dive, white male, non-college, educated voters.
They like Walker, right?
They do like Walker.
Those guys like
white male, non-college, educated voters. 40% for Evers. Walker gets 52%. Anderson gets 6%. White female, non-college. This is interesting. So Tony Evers gets 48%. Walker 46%. Anderson 4.
That seems right.
White male college educated. Historically, that demographic has voted Republican.
Yeah, but a lot less in the recent era.
That is true. That's why I said historically.
Anyone with college education.
Tony Evers gets 49%. Walker gets 45%. Anderson gets 5%. White female college educated. This is where the disparity happens. Evers gets 62%. Walker gets 36%. Anderson gets 1%. He is getting killed.
I hope
educated.
I hope women, college graduate females, vote.
Yes,
in force.
Non-white or Hispanic to round it out here. 49% for Evers, 37% for Walker, 12% for Anderson.
So non-whites. So wait, 40. What did you say?
49% for Evers, 37% for Walker.
Okay, that's wrong. It's going to be way more for Evers among.
Well, yeah, 12% for Anderson. What is that? That is a name recognition gap.
37 for Walker.
Yeah, and 12% for Anderson.
I'm saying if you take all the third party, whatever. If you put all that together and you go 63-37 for Evers, let's just say
the non-Walker
all
vote
coalesces.
Yeah.
Among non-whites, that's still low. And if you need proof, just look at the city of Milwaukee returns. In the last majority, 2/3 of the African American population of Wisconsin lives in the city of Milwaukee. I mean, look at the results there on any election. I mean, it's not going to be like that. I mean, it's going to be. Charles Franklin just isn't getting a good sample of non-white voters, in my opinion. So the real issue is if they don't turn out in mass, then it won't matter much whether it's a 12-point gap or a 30-point gap or a 40 or a 50-point gap. But I would argue that it's at least 70-30, if not. It's probably more like 80-20, honestly.
Right. So we should mention that the partisan makeup of the poll did change slightly because I believe 2 polls ago, I believe it was +3 Republican turnout.
Right.
Last poll in August, it was +2 Republican, which we questioned. Given the current dynamics,
we did question it. Yep.
We didn't think that was likely. So he does now have a +1 Democratic sample. He's basing it off of 45% Republican turnout, 46% Democratic turnout, and 8% independent.
So a lot closer to what we think is.
I think that's
likely.
Much more in line.
It's still actually a little bit Republican skewed historically,
perhaps. But there's a couple months left, so a lot of things could happen. Yeah. There's a Supreme Court thing happening. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Right. So really, it's about who votes. It's about whether or not non-white voters vote. I'm pretty sure that if they turn out in pretty decent numbers, it's going to be more like 80-20, honestly, at least. Well, maybe not at least 80. It'll certainly be at least 70-30. And so in that way, that would help the Evers margin even more. Not in college or college-educated white women, same thing.
Right.
And then also if you were to have non-college white women or non-college white men voting, that would actually help Walker out, unfortunately. And I think you have to just look at who votes. Do the college white women vote? Do non-whites vote? Do college white men vote and outvote the non-college white men? That would be helpful. Because whatever it is, that's where you.
We should.
It's
also,
about who votes,
of course.
Honestly.
So I want to make sure we mention the U.S. Senate race as well. Because not to lose sight of that, because that's a critical race as well. Tammy Baldwin's up. Leah Vukmir is the Republican nominee now, and Tammy Baldwin is killing it. 53% versus 42% for Leah Vukmir amongst likely voters.
So I heard Uncle Rick was in the building. You want to give him a chance to say anything, or do you want to cut it?
I thought he moved. Is he still in the area?
Well, yeah, he texted me. He's on his way. He's not happy about it. We're talking about who votes, and he's going to want to have something to say about this.
Do you think he's going to vote?
Well, let's ask.
Why don't you go ask him?
Wow, there. How you doing?
Oh, hey, Uncle Rick.
Well, I see your buddy, you and Paul's buddy, that molester buddy, Tony Evers, had a good week here.
What are you talking about?
Well, he's Wisconsin's Roy Moore.
Not
that Roy Moore did anything wrong. All he did was go on a date. Well, Evers is all about letting child molesters come to school.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've been seeing it on the commercials there, and they've been pretty well told.
Oh, yeah?
They got that one woman, that lady. She got those little girls in the school, and she's afraid for them.
Is that right?
Well, that Evers.
Do you believe everything you see on television?
He's kind of a peeping Evers.
What's your favorite television show, if I may ask, Uncle Rick?
Oh, I really like Hannity.
How about your non-Fox News?
American Pickers.
Yeah? Are you a hoarder?
No, I'm a picker.
Okay.
I wish I'd have. If I weren't for Obamacare, I'd have more money for my taxes. I'd go be doing those. Oh, they got some awesome antiques.
Yeah. Well, I
got some old Civil War uniforms. You got to see it.
I got to ask you, as long as you're here. We were just talking about the Marquette poll, and it's not looking good for your guy Walker. I mean, say what you will about the commercials.
Yeah, you know.
But what do you think about this poll?
Well, I think you got to look at how many people were sampled. I mean, I think my nephew Paul was telling you about who's going to vote. We got to make sure they have got their voter ID and it matches, and we got to run their felony records.
We have to do that. That's the thing now.
I mean, we got to keep our kids safe, Scott. You got to agree with that. Me on that.
I don't think anybody that's running for office right now.
Scott, your kids are important to you, right?
Of course. I don't think anybody that's running today, Tony Evers, Scott Walker, Tammy Baldwin, Lee Bookman, I don't think anybody's saying we shouldn't keep our children safe. I think that's probably something.
I don't think Tony knows or cares. I think I think the molesters think that
he has spent his career advocating for children. Uncle Rick. He has spent his career.
And those are the ones you got to watch out for. The ones that are too close to children. Those are the ones you got to watch out for.
I think we should be watching out for the people that are trying to compromise the quality of the education in the state.
Well, we all know that Walker's in double the funding for them.
Oh yeah, he's the education
seventh grade apprentices, the Fab Labs.
Right.
I mean, you gotta give Scotty some credit. Finally, like he came around. He gave some of your commie teachers some money. Yeah. So they could keep. I'm sorry. I know that's a little rough, Scott, but he cares. Scott Walker cares about the kids.
It took away their collective bargaining rights, and
that's because he wanted children to go above the teachers.
Yeah, that's why I got to go to the store every year and go buy the teachers' pencils and crayons.
Ultimately,
and paper.
We got to keep our kids safe, Scott. And Tony Evers lets perverts in the classroom. Can't have it. Anyway, Pickers is coming back on for tonight. There's a marathon. You know, they're
you're probably missing it right now.
Well, you know,
are you recording it on your VCR?
They're at the Dodge County Fair, and they go to Walworth County and Waukesha County, and they look at some of those old Pabst Blue Ribbon signs, and those are beautiful.
Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, there you go.
At least we can agree on that.
We got something to agree on. The thing is, the Washington County Fair, though, that's where they ought to go.
Oh, okay.
But, Pickers, they're run by that liberal media, too. But that's a good show. All right.
Well, thanks for stopping by, Uncle Rick.
Thanks, Scott. Good talking to you.
Good talking to you, too.
Go America, and make sure you stand up at the national anthem when you watch your football.
All right. On that note, thanks, everybody. Forward.